Hello, I'm Robert, fact checker and science blogger, and helping people who are scared of various things. And this time, it's people who are scared of COVID-19, and they've been really scared by, I've got so many PMs and scared people as a result of what Boris Johnson has just been saying on the news. So I'm going to first talk about, I think the UK have done a really bad decision, and I'm so ashamed that my country is doing this. But I'm also going to say that there's also room for hope here, so I'm going to talk about that as well. So first, what's scaring everyone, Boris Johnson said, I must level with the British public. Many more families are going to lose loved ones before their time. What an awful thing to say. And the thing is that Dr. Tedros, if you've been following the news press conferences, and Dr. Tedros has been saying at the World Health Organization that this can be stopped. So this is a couple of quotes from him. Several countries have demonstrated that this virus can be suppressed and controlled. The challenge for many countries who are now dealing with large clusters or community transmission, like the UK, is not whether they can do the same, it's whether they will. And then, previous press conference a couple of days before then, if anything is going to hurt the world, it's a moral decay, and not taking the death of the elderly or the senior citizens as a serious issue is one of the moral decays. So, to explain a bit more background to this, so what's happened is that the UK they're just going in a completely different direction from everyone else, from what the WHO was saying. Said the WHO are saying we can stop this, and the UK are saying it can't be stopped. And this is a complete conflict between the two. And as I explain here somewhere, if you're given the choice between these two, the WHO are the experts. The WHO stopped Ebola again in the Congo. They've just stopped it, and it's been no Ebola for 3 weeks. And at the height of the outbreak, the Ebola tracers were tracing 25,000 contacts in the Congo during a war zone with people shooting at each other, and yet they still managed to trace them all and stop Ebola. And China traced 500,000 contacts at the height of its epidemic of COVID-19. The WHO were responsible for eradicating smallpox, and with the cooperation of many countries, they're close to eradicating polio. They've eradicated malaria from many countries, with giving technical advice and scientific support and logistic support as well, and equipment, medical supplies and everything. And the expert who led the team of experts that recently returned from China, Bruce Aylward, was in charge of the polio eradication team. So you could hardly have someone more expert than that to investigate the situation on the ground in China, along with 12 other experts from around the world, and they went to all the big hotspots like to Wuhan and everywhere, and they said the China are containing it. We've seen this. There was a unanimous amongst the 13 international experts and the 12 Chinese experts. It was absolutely unanimous. They all agreed China had saved hundreds of thousands of people from being infected by their methods. Yet the UK is just not believing this. And there's very strong evidence also from that report. They said there's asymptomatic spreading is not driving this. The iceberg is very small. We're seeing most of the iceberg. It's not like a tip with a lot bit hidden below. They're saying we can see most of it. And that's been the experience of other countries as well. Singapore, over 100 cases, and they test everyone in Singapore who comes in with fever symptoms, and they don't have it, apart from the ones they can trace back contact to contact all the way back to China. Nearly everyone in South Korea, thousands of cases, they can trace back all the way back to China. And they just don't find this community spread. And if there is community spread, it's just because you've lost track of the contacts. You're not doing a proper contact tracing, or you haven't found the index case that took it to your country. But meanwhile, the UK, just ignoring all that data, they're just saying that there are 10,000 infected in the UK, in other words, more than in South Korea, more than in Italy. And they're saying, but they have zero evidence. He said that, but he didn't have any evidence at all. Just didn't give a shred of evidence. And they haven't even checked. And the worst thing about this is that the WHO for weeks has been telling countries like the UK and other countries around the world to do what Singapore is doing. Singapore is testing everyone who comes in with fever and with respiratory disease type symptoms for COVID-19. And countries in Africa are doing the same sort of thing. They are hitching into their surveillance systems for flu-like symptoms. And there's no way that the UK can't do this. There's no way, if Singapore can do it and countries in Africa can do it, why can't the UK do it? Of course we can. And yet they haven't tried. So the UK hasn't even looked to see if there is any spreading going on, if there is anything that they haven't detected yet. They haven't even checked. And if they had, and if there is anything, then they can stop it quickly. That's the whole point. It's not just to try and prove or disprove some theory. If you have extensive surveillance, and if you have an Italy going on that you haven't noticed, you're going to find it very early on when you've only got a few cases, and you can stop it. And the UK hasn't even done that. So now look at what they're doing. So, as I said, Boris Johnson says we need to be prepared to lose our loved ones. And their theory is that it's like flu. So the reason is that, so as I said, you've got to decide, who am I going to go with? Do I take the WHO as the reliable source, or do I take the UK advisors as the reliable source? Because it's saying completely different things, and you can't accept both of them. One of them is definitely wrong. And so the WHO are the absolute experts. In the UK, they are only expert in working with influenza. At least in the talk, he only talked about influenza, was constantly making analogies with influenza. And this is not influenza. It just is not the same disease. COVID-19 is not airborne, almost no symptomless spreaders, whereas influenza's 1 in 3 is symptomless. It's only spread on prolonged or close contacts. And China and South Korea have shown to be contained, and that would be impossible with influenza. What China and South Korea have done could not be done if this was influenza. So it's a wrong, completely false analogy. And I can't help it. I can't help but be a bit annoyed and peeved and angry about this, and upset, because the UK is just doing such a stupid thing. I'm doing my best to present it with toning down my language a bit. But it's just awful. I just can't believe it. And so unethical. As the WHO said, if anything is going to hurt the world, it's a moral decay, and not taking the death of the elderly or senior citizens as a serious issue is one of the moral decays. So to explain their theory, these people, their idea is that, like you do with flu, where it does make sense, they're just going to let it go through the country, wherever it wants to go. They're going to try and get elderly people to self-isolate at the height of the epidemic, so as to reduce the number of elderly people who get it. Their idea is that we will all develop herd immunity. But we don't have any previous experience of this virus. So if you get hurt, if it goes all the way through your population, a certain fraction are going to die. And you're just going to say, well, we have to sacrifice 0.2% of the population that get infected, or 0.7%, 0.2% of the younger ones, and a much higher percentage of the older ones, in order to develop the immunity so we don't get it again. And even worse, there's no proof that once you've got it, that you won't get it again. It's such a new disease that we don't even know if you're going to be immune if you get it. And yet they're just going by this theory and just letting people die in order for us to develop immunity. So now the good news is, please don't be scared, because if you're living in the UK, I'm living in the UK, I'm not personally in any way scared of this, because I know I won't get it. And so I say that quite early on in my debunk, because I have these people help over the internet, and they just don't know, they're just very concerned that I won't be there to help them. And so I tell them, and I'm 65 and I'm in the UK, I should be a high risk, but don't worry, because I know what to do, and I would be safe even in Wuhan. And you all can be too, if you do the right things and do it rigorously. What you've got to do, and I explained it in a separate video, you've got to, but very quickly, you've got to wash your hands before you touch your face. If you do touch your face, it's okay to scratch your ears or your chin, but not your eyes, nose or mouth. It's a contact, it doesn't go through the skin, it only goes through your mucous membranes. If you are out and about and someone is coughing and sneezing, then don't let them cough on you. And keep a distance of a couple of meters from anyone who might be sick. If you do that, you're not going to get it. Quite simple. And then, if you're coughing and sneezing yourself, then cough into your elbow. And the various other things, wash your hands when you get back home, and then you can touch your face as much as you like once you've washed your hands. And then wash your hands before you're cooking, during and after cooking, after you use the toilet and so on. It's quite simple. If everyone did this, it would just stop. And it would stop spreading, and that would be the end of it. It wouldn't work for flu, it wouldn't work for colds, but it would for this disease. Because it's quite difficult to get it. And that'll reduce the amount of colds and flus that you get as well. So it has a benefit in that area too. So don't worry about it. If for yourself personally, just make sure you and your loved ones all know that this is what you have to do. But they're not on television telling you. I have not seen. He gave this announcement and he said, I'm not worried because I washed my hands. He didn't explain to the public, he didn't say to the public, you've got to wash your hands. There's very little publicity of this, and I know that because I've talked to people in the UK via PM and they just don't know this. And they should know this. Everyone should know this. In South Korea, their president is constantly on the news telling people what to do. And our Prime Minister is just saying, we've got to let this go through the population and some of you are going to die. It's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. And then they have this recommendation, and for some arbitrary reason, they've said so you probably have heard that the WHO say you've got to self-quarantine for 14 days. These people are now saying that if you have a cold or a flu, then you self-quarantine for 7 days. For some reason, they've decided 7 days is okay. They said that you're most likely to infect in the first 7 days. And what they're missing is that a lot of the infections happen before you're symptomatic. That's why it's so important to do all the contact tracing. To find the people with symptoms, do the contact tracing, and catch and tell people to self-isolate before they get symptoms. And they've just abandoned that. It's not going to happen anymore. And what's more, if you've got a mild disease, and for the first 7 days, for after you've chosen 7 days, well, they gave a sort of reasoning, but it didn't fit with what WHO aren't advising this. It's just their made-up idea, based on some science that they think justifies it. But I wouldn't trust them. But further you can throw a, I don't know, I can't remember this expression. I just don't trust these people to make the right decisions. I'm sorry, but I just don't because they're so contradictory with the WHO. And I trust the WHO. They know what they're doing. They're very reliable. They have a lot of experience, and they have stopped many diseases. And so if these people are saying something so different, So before I go a bit further, and so they're not going to test, and they're not going to test you they're not going to check your travel history anymore. So if you come to the UK from Italy, and they're not going to check if you've got a temperature, they're not going to ask you to report in to be tested, and indeed they're no longer going to test anyone for COVID-19 if they've got mild symptoms. Even if you ring up and say, I think I've got COVID-19, I've got a mild flu, they're not going to test you. And this has serious implications for doctors. I just went into our surgery and I had a note on the front door saying, if you think you might have COVID-19, please ring us up and don't come into the surgery. There's no point in that now, because a lot of people with mild symptoms, they won't know if they've got COVID-19 or not. And they won't have they're not checking their travel history. So what are doctors going to do? Well, I heard at least one doctor is no longer seeing patients is in real life, but saying, I've got to do this over the internet because you might have COVID-19. How are they going to know if someone says, I've got influenza-like symptoms? How are they going to know that it's not COVID-19? And they said they'll only be tested if they need to come into a hospital. And do they go into the hospital first and then get tested and infect all the medical staff? Or do they stay at home and then they've got to prepare an isolation? Are they going to have isolation units? I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's very, very muddly, very confused. And so, anyway, back to the kind of good, try and put a good spin on it. So it's not. So first of all, basis for hope is that Italy's doing it right. The US is doing it pretty right now. It wasn't in the past, but it's scaling up to the United States, scaling up to lots of tests now in the near future. Lots of people in the United States are going to be tested, and they have been doing proper containment and tracing of people as they go into the United States and quarantine and everything, and they're still doing that, and they're going to start testing quite widely. Ireland is doing it right. So it'd be very striking. We have a big outbreak in the United Kingdom, but Southern Ireland is fine, because Southern Ireland is doing it properly. They are doing contact tracing, and contact tracing doesn't require people with high qualifications. So lots of voluntary organisations in Ireland, same thing happening in Italy, are doing all this contact tracing. And that's how they can trace thousands of people. They don't need thousands of nurses to do that. Anyone can do that. Civil servants can do that. And so, say in China, they were tracing 500,000 people at the height of the outbreak. So that's part of the reason for hope. So I do expect the WHO, just because I regard the WHO as a reliable source, so on that basis only, I think that Italy is going to control its outbreak, just as South Korea did. And I think Iran is going to do it. It needs a lot of support from other countries for some of its equipment. So I think Iran's going to do it. It's going to get the support. I think that WHO are happy with sub-Saharan Africa. They have a lot of experience in dealing with Ebola. So, for instance, Congo has got its first case, and it has repurposed its Ebola self-containment quarantine facilities to use for COVID-19. Nigeria has its first few cases. The chief of the CDC for Nigeria was one of the 13 people of world experts who went to China to study it on the ground in China. And as soon as they got their first case in Nigeria, he set up a 100-bed isolation ward in Nigeria, which is quite a big thing to do for a country with not so good healthcare. So they're all set for their first 100 patients who need to be isolated, just on the very first patient that arrived there. And I said this, so they're all doing all contact tracing, containing. They're all set up. They're doing surveillance. The WHO are a bit concerned there may be some undiscovered cases in sub-Saharan Africa, so they're stepping up on that. But basically, sub-Saharan Africa is no longer the main concern. It's now Europe. It's now particularly the United Kingdom, I would think, after this. So, but there is a basis for some hope there, you see, because now all these measures the UK are doing are getting people self-isolated for 7 days after you've got symptoms. Okay, it's going to miss all the people at the beginning of before you have symptoms, where you're infecting people symptomless. It's going to miss the people that you infect after 7 days for the last 7 days. When the WHO didn't say 14 days for no reason, there have to be some infections, possibility of infections after 7 days. But it will reduce it a bit, presumably, and they'll obviously have some basis for it. So hopefully this very eccentric and very strange measure of getting everyone in the UK who's got a cold or a flu to self-isolate for 7 days, instead of tracing the contacts and of the people infected and getting them to self-isolate for 14 days, and never checking anybody in the UK with mild symptoms for COVID-19, instead of checking every day for the people who are contacts for COVID-19. So it doesn't make sense as a strategy, but it might still some of those few thousand people who would have been traced will get the mild symptoms, and they will self-isolate for 7 days instead of 14 days, but they won't have been isolated from the beginning, and they won't even know they're in contact. But then after, once they get the symptoms, they will be self-isolated for 7 out of the 14 days. And this presumably will help to delay the peak, as they intend to do. So they expected a peak sometime in mid-April, and they think there's 10,000 people already. I very much doubt that, because that'd be bigger than Italy and bigger than South Korea. It doesn't seem to fit the rest of the data. And they just don't seem to be taking account of the data. They're just ignoring the scientific data so far, as far as I can see, and just treating this as if it's a hypothetical new flu epidemic. But based on the data, it's very unlikely there's that many cases, and most countries don't have these hidden transmission things. It was just unlucky with Italy, and it may happen from time to time that someone gets it from a very mild at the very beginning, and they don't know that they've even contacted anyone outside of the country. So if that has happened in the UK, it may have started spreading somewhere. You want to find out very quickly, but it seems very rare that happens in the world as a whole. So we've got a few people, obviously, around in the UK who've got mild COVID-19, and who don't know they've got it because they stopped doing contact tracing. And typically between 1 and 5 in 100, I think it is, of the people they trace, of the contacts, do actually have it. And typically each person who's got it infects 2 more, and of those 80% have the mild symptoms. So say we've got 100 people, so we've got 500 people, and we don't need to suppose you've got 100 people who are not being contained, and then they infect 200 more. Now what they're doing is they're ignoring 80%. So it's only the 40 people out of that 200 that would then possibly want to go to a hospital, but only late on, a week or 2 into their illness. They get the mild phase, and then they get the severe phase. It's only the severe phase, after they've been infecting lots of people, that they will then go into hospital. And the other mild ones, they're not going to go in at all. And so on this basis, but once they've got the mild symptoms, the people who eventually go on to the severe stage, they will now be having mild symptoms. All they do is they self-isolate for 7 days. At the end of that 7 days, if they're going to go on to the severe phase, then they start getting the shortness of breath, then they go to hospital. Then they will detect that they're COVID-19. But the other 80 out of 100, then they never do that, and they never know they've got COVID-19. They infect someone else. And typically they'll infect 160 people. And then again, of those, 80% won't know they're mild. But then they might infect rather less than that because of this staying at home for part of the infectious period. So hopefully that slows it down a bit. But at this rate, if it weren't for that self-isolating at home, then you could expect to go up very quickly. But it may, as quickly as Italy, but it's maybe that self-isolating at home of everyone with colds and flus is going to slow it up and push it back a bit. And so then my hope is that as a result of that, then that'll give time for Italy and South Korea and Iran, and then the United States as well. So Italy and the United States especially might be able to impress the UK, and just the building up of so many people who have done it. If the United States completely eliminates their cases, and if Italy completely eliminates their cases, so there are only a few cases per day at least gone way, way down, by, say, the end of March, when the United Kingdom is beginning to think it's coming towards its peak. And if the United Kingdom is the only one that's got it going up, and everyone else has got it going down, surely at that point they'll say, we've got something wrong, and start containing it. And then it'll be a big scramble to try and find everyone. Then they'll be doing all these massive tests of everyone, and then they'll be doing the contact tracing because they've discovered that it works from Italy and the United States, which they could have discovered weeks ago because China did it. And maybe eventually they'll notice the evidence and pay attention to them. So that's my basis for hope. So I do think that the United Kingdom is likely to come round in the end. And again, all this is based on me treating the WHO as a reliable source. Based on that, then this seems a reasonable prognosis, possibility that this is what will happen. So now, so that's all that. So the recommendations, I've explained all that. As I said, wise decisions should be based on data, and that's the extraordinary thing. They'd say doing all this without any data. It's just not. I mean, I did philosophy of science as one of the subjects I was interested in during my postgraduate time. I just did an optional course as postgraduate. It wasn't my thesis topic, but this is not how science is done. And it's just, and I knew I've been a long-term interest in science all my life and following it. And it just doesn't seem to be. So now I don't think it's not quite junk science, and it is not. He's not just. It's not politically motivated. I think what it is scientific conservatism. Not politics, just scientific conservatism. So it's when someone has a very fixed mindset based on lots of experience and lots of data. So it's like a kind of scientific inertia. You've been studying a subject for a very long time, you have loads of facts in your mind, but they're out-of-date facts. They refer to a different situation. It's the reason why you have such resistance, for instance, to continental drift. To a new idea in science, then you have all these scientific conservatism causes a lot of resistance, especially amongst the older, some of the old people are very flexible, but a lot of old people, and scientists are the same, then they didn't have this scientific inertia and linked thinking that it's very hard, they can't even see it. Dr. Whitty won't see what he's doing. He will have no idea what he's doing. And it's one of these things that are kind of very obvious from outside, but if you're in that mindset, you've got these blinkers on, you can't see outside them. So you literally will not be able to see what he's missing. This is what it looks like to me. And so he's an expert with lots and lots of experience in dealing with flu. He has loads and loads of facts that are motivating his thinking, that is based on decades of experience as a professional with flu. And then these facts come along from China, and it's very easy for us who are not involved in any of that to say, but look, the Chinese facts are different, and look, the WHO are the experts. But we haven't had these decades of experience of getting in a rut of knowing all these facts in great detail, and probably knows lots and lots of extremely erudite facts about influenza that the rest of us don't have a clue about. And these are weighting his thinking towards reinforcing his ideas. And then you have all these facts about COVID-19, and for him, that's a respiratory disease, and I know all about respiratory disease. I'm an expert in respiratory disease. I've studied it for decades. I know all these very complicated details about the intricate details about how influenza affects someone and how it proceeds and so on. And then this doesn't match. So to him, he's got a huge body of experience and facts. And then here are a few little extra facts that are coming along that don't match his mountain of facts that he already has. So it's like a little pebble that he's matching against the mountain. And he just says, there's something wrong there. The Chinese data must be wrong. Or the Singapore data must be wrong. Or there's something wrong with South Korea's not right as well. I'm sure that once they stop doing all this containing, it's all going to surge up again. And that's what he's saying. He's saying that Chinese data, it's all going to surge up again in China. And there's zero evidence for that. The Chinese have had days without any cases natively infected in China. They've closed down 14 hospitals in Hubei, and there's no way you can say they'd be closed down 14 hospitals just for show. They need those hospitals. They're full of patients, and now they're closing them down. There's no way that this is a pretense and it's falsified data. This is real. This is happening. The Chinese have contained it. It's going to take an awful lot of time, though, for Dr. Whitty and these other people who've got stuck in the flu way of thinking to really let this kind of percolate. It's slowly going to percolate into their thinking. And then gradually they'll realise, this isn't exactly flu. There's something not quite flu about this. I'd give this a bit more thought. And then, because he's put his whole weight of his expertise behind this and made these big public statements, it's not going to be easy for him to change that and say, oh, I made a mistake. So we've got to be patient, and gradually over time, then he will come round. He can't continually reject the science forever as it becomes more and more obvious. And I think Italy containing it will really be quite striking for him. I'm just guessing. And the United States containing it, and Ireland containing it. Places geographically very close. I know it's a bit bizarre. Why would it matter whether they're geographically close to you or whether the other side of the world? But I think that might make a difference. So that's it. So can Italy? So here we have South Korea, they're containing it. And they've had a bit of a bad blip there because of a call centre with lots of people who got it. But they're still, they've got all the machinery in place to contain that. And they're just doing everything right. Italy is obviously still very much on the up there. It's like that bit. But they delayed it. They didn't do very much at the beginning. They weren't doing the surveillance that the WHO were asking everyone to do. They, just like everyone in Europe, they just weren't taking it quite seriously enough. They missed it early on, and then they've got caught unawares. Their hospitals weren't really prepared to deal with it. They hadn't quite got ready to ramp up so quickly. They're having all sorts of problems. They've got they're treating it a bit like Wuhan in the early days, and so it's still going up like that. But they are now doing everything right. They're catching up for lost time very quickly, being very swift and decisive, and WHO say they're doing it right. And so we should see that begin to taper off, like in South Korea. And if you get a curve like that for Italy, I think that may then turn the UK's thinking around. Anyway, so those are the main points. I'm trying to keep my video a little bit shorter. The main thing is that you don't worry personally. You can stop it. Have a watch my other video. Go to the WHO health site. I'll give the link to this, how you can stop yourself getting COVID-19, which also links to the WHO website and all the graphics and help there, and a page on the BBC as well about how to do it and how to wash your hands properly. Do that and you won't get it. So, and there's some very nice stickers there that you can put up on your wall and remind you. I'll just pick that up and I'll just show you my government petition thing that I'm going to submit. So I've submitted a petition. That's coming up. I'll show you the petition. So I have submitted a petition to the US government, and it says UK government must immediately return to the contained phase for COVID-19. The UK should immediately restart contact tracing, containment and testing of mild cases of COVID-19. Also, following recommendations of the report from the WHO China Joint Mission headed by Dr. Aylward and Dr. Liang on 25th of February, we should do widespread surveillance in the community to find cases. And I got those two quotes from Dr. Tedros, which I think I've already read out. So they have to approve it. I've got the 5 signatures to get it started, and then they have to approve it, and they have to vet it and check it. So there's nothing there that could get in the way of it being a problem, vetting it. And then I will let you all know when it's ready to sign, which could be up to a week. I hope they do it a bit faster than that. And so this, if we get 10,000 people signing it, then the UK government has to make a response. They have to reply to it, to the petition. If we get 100,000 people sign it, then this will be considered for a debate in Westminster. And so we've got to. I'm going to hopefully we can get 100,000 people to sign it. I don't know how possible that is, but a lot of people who care quite a lot about this, and they're saying, oh, I'm going to show it to all my friends as well. So as soon as this is ready to sign, then I'll be putting it up. I'll do a special video about it. I'll do everything I can to publicise it, and hopefully, and then if we can get a story running about this in on BBC or somewhere high profile, then we might get lots of signatures, and at least get people thinking about this. And just the very striking contrast, and just because the BBC don't even, I have not seen anyone on the BBC quote this bit, that the challenge for many countries who are now dealing with large clusters of community transmission is not whether they can do the same, it's whether they will. And that's just not been reported. I haven't seen that reported on the BBC website. And the WHO have been saying things like that for weeks, and it's just not being reported in the UK media. So it's no wonder if Boris Johnson is mainly going by the UK media, it's no wonder that he thinks his science advisors are right. So I think the media have a lot to do with this as well. So anyway, yes, I was just going to show. So there you are. That's one graphic you can put on your wall from the BBC to remind yourself what to do. And then I've got a few other from the WHO site at the bottom. I'll just scroll down to it and show you those as well. There you are, a few. That's about if you're travelling. Avoid close contact with people suffering from fever or cough. Frequently clean your hands. Avoid touching your eyes, nose or mouth. And a few other things like that. These are all graphics from WHO. So go and stick a few of those up on your walls, and you can download them, print them out, remind yourself, if you do these things, then you won't get COVID-19. And you're not only protecting yourself, you're not only protecting your loved ones by getting them to do it, you're protecting the whole world. Because by stopping getting it myself, then I can't pass it on to anyone else. And so I'm cutting any chain of transmission that would have passed through me to someone else. It's not going to. If someone comes to me who's got COVID-19, they're not going to pass it on to me. So I won't pass it on to anyone else. And so, and then there's this thing about how you should I avoid shaking hands. Yes. Now you get a lot of people who are doing this. That is not the right answer. If you want to avoid shaking hands, then you should not use elbow bumps. And you should not touch your feet either, because that's pushing you quite close to someone. What we should be doing is, but Dr. Tedros does you can do a wave, you can do a bow. Dr. Tedros puts his hand to his heart. You can do a namaste, whatever. You can do a bow, you can do it that, or just wave, or do a kind of high five, a distant in-air high five, or something. And so that's another thing we should be doing in the UK. But if someone does come up and grab your hand and shake it, then just don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth until you've washed your hands. And then, because if you wash your hands, this is not a microbe. These are viruses, and viruses are very easy. This particular virus anyway, some viruses are a bit more resistant, but this one, it's just a little smidgen of genetic information and a bit of protein mixed together, and you put soap on that and it just destroys it. So just wash your hands with soap and it's gone, just completely gone. Wash yourself with disinfectant and it's gone. So just wash your hands and you're completely getting rid of it. You're not just getting rid of most of it, you're just getting rid of it. So long as you wash your hands thoroughly, and the nails and between the fingers and everything. I'm just reassuring you, because I get people saying, we'll find it rather difficult to believe that such simple measures will protect you from COVID-19, but they will. So just do that and you won't get it. Tell your loved ones to do that, they won't get it. And good for tell your children as well, though especially children under 10, then they're very safe, because they just don't die of it at all. And babies are very safe, newborns. So don't worry about them, and they don't seem to be involved in transmitting it either. They're doing serology tests in China, and so hopefully they will find out better from that. But so far there's no evidence that young children who get only mild symptoms doing any transmitting of it to anyone else either. And so all this closing of schools is very hypothetical. Nobody has yet proven that it can be transmitted through schools. But they don't know for sure, particularly because the schools in China were closed during the big outbreak in Wuhan because it was the holidays, and they kept them closed. So they don't have any evidence of whether or not it transmits through schools, but it doesn't seem to transmit through children at home. And it's pretty much the same situation. At least they couldn't find any evidence, and it's something that needs to be researched. So, but anyway, so it's a bit difficult to get especially young kids to do this, but it may not be the most important concern, and especially adults do need to do this, and the adults are the ones that need to protect themselves, and teenagers as well, and we should all be doing that with teenagers. And again, your risk, if you did get this, then your risk is very small unless you're elderly. But still, over the entire country, then 0.2% risks means 2 out of every 1,000 people are going to die of the ones who are infected. And that's just totally unacceptable when we can stop that. Even of young people, even 40-year-olds, for instance, then out of 1,000 40-year-olds, 2 of them are going to die of this if they get infected by that, when there was no need for them to die at all. And then of the elderly people, then it's more than that. But now, if those 1,000 people, if they all wash their hands and do the social distancing, then none of them are going to get it. And if 3/4 of them do that, then that's going to break 3/4 of the transmission chains. And if 3/4 of us do this very carefully, then it's not going to spread far at all. 100 people, instead of infecting 200, then 400, will infect 50, 25, and it soon stops. So in that way, you are helping, just by doing this, you're helping to break some of the transmission chains that will otherwise be spreading through our society. And the more people that do this, the more chains are being broken, then that is how you can help not just yourself, but help the entire world. Help the United Kingdom, and then stop the United Kingdom from becoming a source for other countries, and so in that way you're helping the entire world. So, anyway, hopefully this has helped you a bit, and I better stop it, do join our Facebook group on Doomsday Debunk. Be sure to read the rules at the head of the group before you join. That's very important. It's because of these rules that the group is able to function. It has people who are very stressed out, very anxious, scared, thinking extremely clouded. We have autistic people, we have manic depressive people, and with all this, it's very important to keep to the rules. It's the rules that make it function properly. So please read the rules very carefully, and we had lots of problems, and the rules have solved these problems. Just one at a time, one thing after another, and then we bring up a new rule to deal with that issue. And because it's autistic people, it's very important that it's in rules, and it's not based on social niceties. You don't say be kind to people or something like that, because they are being kind in their own way as best they can, but they're just not seeing certain things, so you have to have rules. So very, very important to follow the rules. Anyway, so maybe see you on Facebook, and do subscribe if you want to watch more of these videos on YouTube, and I hope this helps. And I hope, again, that some of these people in our group were absolutely terrified last night after what Boris Johnson said. So I do hope that this is helping you to calm down a bit, and to realise, first of all, you can keep completely safe, and we together, if enough of us start doing or washing our hands and everything, it doesn't matter what Boris Johnson says and does. If we get 3/4 of the UK population to do this, it's going to stop, no matter what the government decides to do. So we are very powerful as well, and if just by our own independent action, just doing these simple precautions, everyone who does that is breaking a chain of transmission and helping the world, as well as themselves and their near ones.